Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Essenfeld, the VP of Strategy at iCIMS, and I am really excited to be here live at HR Tech, doing our first live broadcast for a virtual conference. I'm joined here by Bob Carruthers from Bristol Myers Squibb, and we'll be talking about searching your own house first, building a winning workforce through internal talent mobility and advancement. And before we kick off the discussion and let Bob do an intro of himself, I just wanted to give a quick background on iCIMS. So iCIMS has been in business for over 20 years. We recently reintroduced ourselves through the Talent Cloud. And the iCIMS is a talent cloud company that is empowering organizations to attract, engage, hire, and advance the talent that builds your winning workforce. And we're focusing on helping you build that winning workforce with diverse, digitally skilled talent. And it's so important nowadays to not just focus on bringing new talent into your organization, but also bringing in and advancing your existing talent, making sure that they have the right career trajectory, they increase your productivity as a business, and they keep your efficiency up, and also to maintain a great workplace culture and environment during this work from anywhere time as everyone's dealing with transitions and ups and downs. At iCIMS, after that 20 plus years of being in business, we've amassed over 4,000 customers globally, over 2 million global users. We've projected some of our customers here as logos. And for us, it's just so important that we help you as an organization understand the capabilities of your individuals, really looking at their skills and looking at information that helps you advance them in their career and understand what they're capable of using information that really shows you their skills and isn't information that can help introduce or increase bias in your organization. And today it's just so important that we focus our technology on those pieces of an individual that show what they're capable of without having that bias piece of it. So it's a big focus of iCIMS and a big focus of a lot of our clients and partners. So without further ado, let's kick off. Again, really happy to have Bob Carruthers from Bristol Myers Squibb. And Bob, feel free to introduce yourself.
No, thank you, Joe. It's great to be back here at HR Tech and with you today. I haven't seen you in a while.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I ever envisioned it being in my basement, speaking into a camera, but it's really nice to see you. Yeah, I'm the Executive Director of Talent Strategy and Innovation at Bristol Myers. I've been with the organization, including the Celgene acquisition from last year for about 4 years now. My responsibility really is enabling, the workforce channels across all of BMS. So, inclusive of contingent labor, talent acquisition, and talent management, and how that all kind of interweaves together and maximizes, the resources of BMS here.
That's great. Thanks, Bob. And just so everyone knows, where are you located today, outside of being in your basement?
Oh, I'm in rainy Lebanon, New Jersey, probably about 45 minutes outside New York City.
All right. Yeah, it's raining where I am too. Well, I'm glad all the connections and live streaming is working out well, and I appreciate the introduction. So as we kind of set the stage for the discussion today and dive into the talent plans at Bristol Myers Squibb, we really just want to be able to understand the basis of this conversation, the journey that Bob and his team are on. So Bob, Bristol Myers Squibb is a global biopharmaceutical company with more than 30,000 employees, and you're growing, which is just awesome to hear in today's economy that you're adding more jobs. And also some of that growth is coming from M&A. So you recently went through a couple big acquisitions. Can you share a little bit what that was like and how you've built and evolved a culture that values talent and its people so highly?
Sure. As you can imagine, there's a lot of activity in this industry and in this field. I'm speaking from purely my point of view. Like I said, I joined Celgene in 2017. We quickly, I think I was there about a year or so, and we had acquired a company out of Seattle, Washington, Juno Therapeutics. So that was really my first, as far as with Celgene, the first M&A activity I saw. Juno was kind of an upstart, biotech company located out in Seattle. Really, from the talent point of view, the culture is more of that traditional, kind of tech atmosphere. Celgene was a little bit more mature as far as years and the size of the organization. So we had acquired them, and at that point, it was already the mixing of two cultures. We were kind of the big brother at that point. And, through 2018, the two organizations came together. At that point, we merged really the talent philosophies and the strategies together. And, really we're in the process of kind of standing that up and fine tuning it, when in 2019, BMS then came in and acquired us. So most of 2019 was really, I was leading the integration in the contingent areas and the talent acquisition. I was working with, within the two organizations to really prepare us, for the future of what that, we often called it, new co would become. So that was pretty much the better part of 2019. We closed that deal in November. And then from there, it just continued, through right out of the gate, we saw unprecedented growth. We were really in a steady state of recruiting. So, it kind of set the stage for 2020. And, we all know, what that's kind of been like, but we've been doing it actually in more of a growth mode where we were continuing the recruiting efforts. And that, that's kind of what led to today.
I appreciate you sharing that. So one thing that you said that just stood out to me, I'm curious of your perspective on this and how you've handled this with building talent, is that when you made the acquisition at Celgene, you were part of the bigger organization acquiring the smaller organization. And now with Bristol Myers, acquiring Celgene, the roles were reversed. How did you use that experience being the larger company making the acquisition previously to then being the smaller one and integrating? What were the learnings that you had from that previous experience that you could bring to this new one to really help that transition and make that smoother?
Yeah. Oftentimes I think it comes down to transparency and honesty and really collaborating and working together. Obviously you got to have some empathy and putting yourself in that position. I mean, I myself, I was speaking at HR Tech last November, and personally, you don't always know where you're going to end up. But I think if you keep an open mind and realizing it's not one size fits all, and you surround yourself with the right people, you can pull that through. And I think even going back to Juno, I mean, we really did take the best of both worlds. I mean, I saw Celgene adapt. We became a lot more open to ideas and flexible work and things like that. And, when we started working with our BMS colleagues, we didn't know what the future looked like at that point. We knew we had to kind of harmonize the two departments together, but what we would become, we didn't really know at that point. So I think just continuing that dialogue and taking people along for the ride really helped, and accepting that culture changes, people change. And as our industry changed, we need to really be changing along with it. So even for a bigger, more established company like BMS, I mean, I've seen tremendous strides in that regard as far as paying attention to the culture and communicating it outwards and really taking people along and making them part of that culture.
Yeah, it sounds like being able to identify and help reinforce the adaptability, regardless of the organization size and what dynamic your part of that M&A activity is just so important to do that.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to dive in now that you're at Bristol Myers Squibb, what your vision of talent is for them. You take us through that.
Yeah, sure. Right out of the gate, the talent acquisition philosophies were a little bit different. BMS was more of a global services organization. They had, great people, great resources, and Celgene was coming in and Juno with more of a center of excellence philosophy. So what we ended up seeing, towards the mid part of 2019 were these two things coming together and taking the best of both worlds. The type of talent, and we're going to talk, I know, a lot more about it, but the type of talent we're going after now is different than the past, So we really took the best of both worlds there. We stood up a center of excellence. We embedded our recruiters alongside the business so that we could understand firsthand what we're looking for, but then, we took aspects of BMS like global services and the resourcing and budgeting models, and we applied those best practices. So, that's really what we put together. I mean, luckily I was in a position, just from a former life where I'd actually stood up those types of organizations. So when I went to Celgene, I kind of went with that in mind. So for me, at least, it's been a continuation of that effort, but to really see it come to life now at a company the size of BMS and with the promise of BMS, it's from an individual point of view, it's super exciting.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can sense the excitement
Yeah,
just in,
you'll
in
see
this
it.
conversation. I'm just curious about, setting up centers of excellence and using that model. Are there any like foundational principles or just guiding lights that you use to do that the right way?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if anyone out there today didn't get a chance to catch the opening, from Josh, as far as talent management and where companies are at today, I felt like he was talking right to me. I knew exactly what he was saying. I knew the companies he was showing, and that really is where we're at. Um, I know as we talk today, there's going to be people out there that are like, oh, this product will solve that, or this person will do that. But really, you got to be, everyone has their own game board out in front of them when you're in my type of role, So as far as, what works, what's the one peanut butter spread over everyone? I don't know if that's the case, So what I've done, and this, I've surrounded myself with partners and people that I feel are best in class, that I can collaborate with and pull these things through. So, as far as my game pieces, I know there's enterprise digital
Yeah.
systems that we use like Teams and some of the bigger players in the
Yep.
space. I know, we've implemented Workday. So we have some of the bigger HR tech platforms, but then there's some other nuanced systems and technologies that we're really tapping into, especially in this talent management space and mobility space where, you might need to get a little bit more granular and a little bit more best in class. So really it's kind of taking all those things and really orchestrating it together so that it works for your organization, and where you're at in that timeline.
Yeah. No, that's helpful. And it just, again, going to the bigger themes, it sounds like the adaptability is so important. And then also the collaboration and
Mhm.
knowing who to include in that circle of collaboration as you do that,
Yep. Yep.
what tools you need to be successful there. So it's certainly not an easy thing to pull off.
And I think too, just recognizing some of the pieces sometimes that people miss, like the change management, the communications. It's great to talk about bots and AI and all these things, but taking people along for the ride and helping them understand how that works within their working environment, especially our recruiters. That's first and foremost. I actually have rules with my team. If a recruiter has to stop what they're doing and turn, I tell them all that I don't even want to hear about it. I want it to be at least seem all inclusive, that working environment. I think the more we work towards that, the better environment we build and the more scalable we become.
Yeah, the swivel chair integrations don't work that well long term. Having that integrated in and making it seamless. I mean, especially with how much stuff we're seeing be embedded into Teams. At iCIMS, we just won the HR Product of the Year with our Teams integration, and it was a must-have for us because you have to embed in that flow of work. Because with our work from anywhere environment, there's zero patience for wasted time. Everything has been compacted and contracted. So it's just good to hear that you have the same philosophy, and we're just seeing that across the board.
Yeah.
I think it brings up a lot of the challenges that we're all facing, especially with talent acquisition today, especially with 2020 being such a unique year and presenting a whole set of unexpected challenges and opportunities at the same time. So, I'd just love to hear from your perspective of some of the challenges you're facing with talent acquisition specific to this year and how you're addressing them.
Yeah. I think in all, just the talent that we're pursuing, it's a new world for us. In the past, I think you could, look at our competitors, right, in biotech and pharma and go out and try to pick people away. But, that's not really the case anymore. What we're seeing is the emergence of soft skills and being able to collaborate. So we're actually starting to get more so now into competing against some of the bigger tech companies. We're looking for people who have the capability to not only understand the hard skills and what it takes to be successful in our industry, but being able to collaborate across lines and have literally an engineer or what would typically be an IT person standing right beside you, trying to help collaborate and work together to bring our products to market faster.
Yeah.
That's especially, especially with the pacing that's going on. We have some exciting, products, or at least it's an R&D coming out in the future. And, we want to get in front of that. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that we're identifying the right people and that they can, like you keep saying, adaptable, and that they can kind of cross lines and they have the skill sets to go into roles that, quite frankly, don't have a job description yet. We don't have that framework yet. And that's developing every day.
Yeah, it's funny to think about the job description and kind of what a false flag that might be for these opportunities that we're having. And I think it's why we're seeing this industry, shift so strongly towards understanding skills. And I think that, we're evolving, just listening to what you're saying and reflecting on some of the other things we keep hearing, is that it's this evolution of AI and ML, where the last HR Tech where we're at, and we're all there in person, you couldn't turn around without being bombarded with AI and ML.
Mhm.
And I think what we've learned from that is that there's a real practical application for it, especially with this focus on skills, where there's nothing better of understanding an individual's capabilities and their skills. And when you start running and training it through these neural networks that are using AI to really understand and find those correlations between skills and success of your talent and the success of your organization. And diversity is such a key part of that as well. Making sure you have that diverse set of thought and have that diverse workforce to have those good outcomes. So it's not easy to figure this out, but it's a mix, it sounds like.
Exactly. And not only is it a mix, I mean, I see technology all the time. I mean, from my point of view, I would be all over it. I love it. But to make it work within your organization, and I'm fortunate enough, I'm in a very special position. I mean, like I said, when we came over with Celgene originally, under my, kind of scope of work was contingent labor and talent acquisition, but since then we've added talent management. So for all intents and purposes, what I get the privilege of doing is looking out across all the work streams that buy, build, borrow, and making sure that these things are working harmoniously together. So to go out and take in AI and some of these pieces, I get to work with my procurement colleagues and my IT colleagues to really make that work, here at BMS. So you're exactly right. I mean, HR Tech last year, it was amazing to see all of that in play. But, for a company my size and to pull that through, we need, not only the organizational structure to support that, but the partnership and collaboration across lines to get that moving at least efficiently.
Absolutely. And I think trust and explainability is such an important part of AI. And I think that's what took a couple of years for a lot of larger global organizations to get more comfortable with, is how the technology works, why it works the way it does, and then how it can be used to understand people. Even though you're using technology to do it, you're getting a better understanding of their skills and what their potential advancement, internal mobility is.
That's exactly right. And then, it's really too things that we don't know yet. I was watching Netflix the other day, and the what's the social experiment? Did you get a chance to see it?
I did see that. Yes.
Yeah. And, it's what can it become, and trying to, like you mentioned with your products, I mean, guard against bias, make sure you're doing the proper inclusion, strategies and things like that. So it's just it's a wide open world. I mean, and even last year, if you would have told me where we'd be today, it's amazing, so it's a great field to be a part of.
Yeah, and I think that movie, not to talk about if people haven't seen it, but I think it shows you how sensitive we have to be to public perception. Because that movie, represented very clearly that it's people in a room controlling other people's behavior using technology to do that. And that's not really the spirit of AI and ML, certainly to maximize advertising dollars possibly. But when we're talking about it with talent and advancement, I think it's so important that we realize doesn't have that kind of devious monetary driven approach. It really is to understand what people are capable of, understand what their skills mean related to what jobs are, but still use that intelligence that it does have to be able to make those predictions and searches and recommendations. But yeah, the movie is a good eye opener to make sure that, we are careful and we're very transparent as to why and how we're using that technology.
Yep. Especially in our space, where we're selecting talent, and at the end of the day, that's what we're looking to do, is move as efficiently as possible, but making sure that we're putting the right people in those seats. So
yeah, I mean, people are trusting their careers with us, and then they're trusting their lives with BMS. And I think, one of the really interesting threads that I've started to learn very little bit about, but you've really raised my awareness, is the work around you're doing with CAR T. For me as an outsider to your industry, I think it's just super exciting to hear about some of these treatments and, therapies. And I just wanted to hear like how your team's hiring is impacting that work. And if you could just give us a very quick explainer on what it is, so the rest of the audience watching, understands and can follow along.
Sure. And I have some of my colleagues online today. I gotta steer a little bit. I got to be a little bit careful with some of these. For those of you who don't know what cell therapy is, I would encourage you, Google it. It's really, it's got an amazing outlook. We'll leave it at that. And we're doing a lot of R&D in that space. We have products on clinical trials now. But what it is, it's a new edge in science. And a lot of the people, like I said, that we're recruiting for now, they don't have 20 years of this on their resumes, and it's about attracting the right people, really setting up a taxonomy so that we're kind of moving in that direction, so that if I have one skill today, that I can adapt that as this industry continues to move along. So that's really in the marketplace that we're in right now. There are people that we are trying to go out and go after, but like I said earlier, they're not necessarily coming from these traditional paths. So we really need to get out in front of that and start to identify or almost predict where they are going to be. Where's Joe Essenfeld 5 years from now, based on the skills he has today, and starting to correlate that as far as what we're seeing from our strategic workforce planning processes, and trying to make those matches. And where they don't exist, how do we curate learning and other opportunities and projects, and getting those in front of people so that we're putting them on the path that those things can meet in the future. I mean, that's a whole nother way of doing recruiting, rather than just gathering a resume and looking for a couple of keywords there. So that's kind of the space that we're playing in that therapy. And there's a lot of growth, in roles that I guess you wouldn't even typically think of, like manufacturing and commercialization and things like this. So, it's really our recruiters and our team members understanding the business objectives, and then us trying to put in scalable enablement to make sure that those things are coming together and it's served up efficiently.
Yeah, I think listening to that, it made me realize how much more forecasting and prediction you have to do as part of your talent acquisition strategy, especially for these harder to fill positions, where you really have to make best guesses based on data of where people's career trajectory are going to land, and then how you can intersect with them to potentially bring them into your organization, because you don't have that many opportunities. This isn't about this huge pool of talent that you just have to raise your hand in and say, hey, we're hiring. It's really about, again, understanding that trajectory, that career trajectory, the capabilities, and where they might grow, and then when to bring them into your organization. So it becomes much more precise and data driven in order to be successful, it sounds like.
Yep. And, looking out across our internal landscape and seeing, in each of those channels, what is our potential? Yeah. Then looking out into the future, scraping sites like Talent Neuron and LinkedIn Insights and some of these things to bring these things together. Yeah. Then having the analytics to make that, like I said, make it efficient and make it precise, because if you miss, it doesn't add a lot of value there. So, how do you do that in a scalable model the size of BMS? And that's really what we're trying to tackle. And it's not just the job you're in now, and I always kind of, when I talk to my colleagues here, like, I had led reporting and integration in the past life. You're not going to see that on my resume, probably at this point with my age, unfortunately, kind of getting away from me. You're not going to see that until you look deep into that individual to serve up those skills. Yeah. So that's really what we're trying to do, is really understand the whole person and where we're going and how we can maximize each individual in a very efficient manner.
Yeah, I appreciate you going through that. And I think I'm looking at some of these live questions come in, and it's awesome to see the engagement. So thank you for everyone for submitting those. We'll get to as many as we can, but we're getting a lot of questions focusing in on internal mobility. So I just think it'd be great to move forward a bit. And I know you mentioned internal candidates and looking at your existing workforce as opportunity to advance their careers and anticipate where they're going to be going. So it would just be good to understand even deeper why internal mobility and advancement is so important, especially now more than before, and how you're promoting this culture of talent mobility at such a large, growing, and evolving organization that you have at BMS. So I know it's a broad question, but it'd be great to have you kind of narrow in and share some really specific examples you think the audience can relate to and identify with.
Of course. At the end of the day, the parts I like, the technology, it's kind of driving it, or enabling it, for lack of a better term. But, I think you're going to make it really intuitive and really almost an incentive for people to give you that information. One of the things colleagues have told me, one of the top reasons why people, leave our organization is, they quote, lack of opportunity, and like I said, the next role for somebody or the next project could be literally, well, and the next office over, and if you don't have that capability, if you're not putting people in that situation, they would never know it, and then they go and they make a rash decision because something else comes along or something like that. And as I said, we're going after some of the best and brightest people in the world. I mean, these people have skill sets that are beyond what we even know today, so we want to make sure that they continue their career here at BMS, and that we're maximizing that potential. So I think it's almost getting them to kind of believe in that culture, and understanding that full life cycle of an employee. So, if we go out and we make promises, hey, come to BMS, we want you to do, a certain role here, is that once they're here, that we're delivering on that promise, and that they're continuing to grow their career, and they're being involved in work that they want to be involved in. And that's great, that freedom of thought and being creative, and I think just going from the old to new, I mean, that's really a new way of looking at work. So when I say talent mobility and talent management, I don't want, when a role should become vacant, for the hiring manager just to automatically think, we got to go out and find this person. It's too taxing on the organization. Then we bring them in, and all the training and everything that goes along with that. To not maximize our internal resources and utilize that, that business knowledge, I think it's missing out on a key capability. And so many other companies I've worked for, you see it at the very top sometimes, in some of these programs and things like that. Really, it's my dream to kind of push that down into the organization, drive it down deep, so that we're doing that for everybody, and offering everybody these opportunities. Because, somebody walking in the door today at an individual contributor level or a lower manager level, you don't know where they're going to be 5 years from now, and to maximize that here and to continue to grow that career for them. And like I said, as I get older in my career, I love to see it. It's one of the things that really drives me, is when I see team members come in, they may have been a coordinator, and now they're in the talent management team. It's super exciting. So that's kind of how I see that workforce, complementing this model that we're putting in place.
Yeah, and something else that strikes me is that I think nowadays, especially, people are looking for comfort and stability more than they ever have been before, for obvious reasons.
Yep.
And if you're a part of an organization that has a great initiative around internal mobility and career advancement, I think for me personally, I would just feel more comfortable and stable in the role and company I'm at, because I know that I can have that natural progression happen. And I know that, for my own career in 2 years or whatever the time period is, I don't necessarily have to pick my head up and look outside and restart, or, try something new. I could look for that opportunity inside my organization. I just think it creates a healthier environment where people can get that comfort and stability from work, and they're going to value that. And I think you get that value back as an organization in spades when you're able to give people that feeling.
Yeah. And, I think a lot of times too, with the planning cycles, what they are, and, with performance planning and goal planning, everyone looks at it kind of on a year by year basis, and I think the more you can kind of pull that out. So, people have their own individual goals as well. Like I said, mine now, I love to see people move up through the organization. That doesn't happen in a year-over-year period. I mean, that takes a certain amount of time. So to get that kind of fulfillment, and I'm speaking for myself now, you really need to be with that organization and see that play out. You need to see where, your initial legwork went in, and now where it's paying off 4 years, 5 years down the line. And I think if you don't give that people that capability, the work becomes very tactile, very almost transactional, no matter what role you're in, because you're there to meet this year's goals, So I think that's been immensely helpful, is, starting to build these careers. You get 3 or 4 different jobs under your belt within one organization, and you see the kind of the fruits of your labor. You start to have much more of a vested interest. And when the end result can turn out like what we do here at BMS, it's fascinating. It's just great work.
Yeah. What you just mentioned there, obviously you have to be focused on longer range planning, and you're talking about seeing results 4 to 5 years. And in nowadays time frame, that is like an eternity. I know I think it's me, I feel this, but I feel like a month feels like sometimes 6 months, just because of the work nature that we're all experiencing through this time. So, to change corporate strategy rapidly, I think we've all been battling with how to handle that, to not be overly reactive, but also not to be tone deaf of the changes that are happening around us. And kind of bringing that to a very specific question for you is that, have your plans around talent mobility and internal talent management changed, accelerated? How have they actually been evolved this year? If change at all, or has this been the plan and just happened to conveniently fit with kind of this new trend that we're all moving towards of really focusing on our existing workforce?
Right. I've this model, like I said, I've been involved in it for quite a while. I've worked at organizations that are kind of similar. So, but I never got to pull it through like I do now. Kind of looking at the scope. What I've seen, within the last year is just there's a real commitment to it now. And understanding that HR is more than a talent acquisition stream or a learning stream. It's these things all kind of working cohesively together and partnering across all of HR and even our cross-functional relationships. What I've seen is really more of a top-down support of moving in this direction. I mean, to move from a global services organization to a COE essentially overnight and bringing these things together, I mean, there's a certain amount of risk there, and our head of HR and all these individuals really put, a lot of support into us and helping us see, I guess it just came down to the culture and trusting in the culture that we had that kind of commitment and that top-down commitment. I mean, even this year alone, I was part of an initiative, was at the leadership team and part of enterprise digital strategy, where they really picked out 6 areas of the organization that could propel the future of BMS. And obviously there's R&D and there's analytics work streams and there's all these things. Number 6 on there was talent strategy. So for the executive team to come in and say that talent could be a growth engine to the future of BMS, typically HR is looked at as, they're not the revenue driver, so to have that top-down commitment and to be leading a project like that, where we're literally presenting to leadership teams across BMS, it's really, like I keep saying, it's really exciting. And they are showing that support and getting behind this idea. And this whole idea of skills and capabilities, it was really at the basis of everything that we were talking about, whether it be the talent marketplace, the analytics. I mean, that really was kind of the hub of what we saw. And the leaders were lining up to commit to that and to help us push these initiatives, into these experimental phases and these pilot phases to then, kind of scale this up and bring it to this next level that I'm talking about.
Yeah, I love hearing that at BMS, talent was identified by the executive team as a driver for growth, because I think that sometimes there can be this mentality that technology is going to replace people. But I think what it's really done is amplified the skills of very talented individuals, and it's made the people the actual differentiator that companies need, even more so than the best cutting edge technology. So it's, we are in short supply of talented, skilled laborers, and I think that's a good place to be for the market. And it's great to see that identified at an executive level at a company, as innovative and global as BMS is.
Exactly. And the exciting part for me, because I'm more of the behind the scenes, is not only are we doing that and we're pushing the envelope there, and our hiring's up 40% this year, but on the backside, we're actually saving money as well. Our numbers are kind of starting to fall down in the line, and so like I said, that's something that you don't normally see, is we're actually driving revenue or working with the business to drive revenue, and at the same time maximizing our resources. Man, that's my goal.
That's great. Yeah. And that's a sustainable model. It's one thing to grow and not be profitable, but to be able to grow and have costs go down and becoming more efficient. That's so important. So I think as we kind of look forward and look to the future, it would be great to understand some practical ways that talent, tech, and business leaders who have tuned in today can apply to their business. So whether or not they're in the pharma industry, how can they first of all make the business case that investment needs to be made in advancing internal talent? And then how do they get started in putting a program in place? If you just kind of take us through just a framework that might be more globally valuable and relatable than just specifically to BMS, it'd be great to have that for the audience.
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed is, and it's probably the part of my game I work on the most, is the communication and change management efforts that go along with this work, is really understanding, first, and it's really about the org structure and how you're put together, and who your players are, and understanding what their goals are and their ambitions are and how that complement your own, So for me personally, it's always like, I kind of put myself in their place, that empathy place. I'm still driving for TA at the end of the day, but I think it's when you're going out and you're presenting these business cases, is just starting to understand it from other people's point of view. not just functions, but locations and geographies, looking at it through that other lens, before pulling it back and then pushing your ambitions out there. So I think the more you can make that happen, I think the better. I think you gotta, essentially, you got to move as quick as possible, minimize the mistakes, but you have to take a little bit of risk too, and understanding. So if you surround yourself with some of the best people, you mitigate that risk just based on experience and people's knowledge base. So I think that's been huge in our success in starting to build this business case and really having a direction and an eye to that strategy. So people, understanding, and here we are, we're kind of falling into those soft skills again. I'm not talking about, oh, you got to know AI. You have to know the concept of AI and how the technology departments will look at that versus enterprise systems versus TA and our needs. So it's really marrying all those things together. I think that's, at least from what I've seen, the best way to build that business case is really partner early on and just putting it out there as far as, what the rules of the game are, and how you're going to work together to achieve that.
Yeah, I think your point about soft skills really resonates with me. At iCIMS, a huge part of our organization has been helping to nurture these soft skills in our own workforce. And, soft skills like empathy, just being able to refine that and, be an effective, empathetic leader is so important to us at all levels in our organization. And I think the attention on that, especially, how it's helped with DEI initiatives, is just so important for individuals to have those skills at every level, because it really helps keep the workforce together and helps us move forward. So it's that listening, it's that understanding that I think is now more important than it's ever been before to be successful at work and successful as an organization.
Exactly. It's funny. I was going to I'm having construction in my house right now. So I think this is the only clean wall in my house, but I was going to hang, my team got me this blanket with all their pictures.
Nice.
And it's funny because I've been with it probably the longest. I mean, there weren't that many people within TA when I first joined Celgene. So to see where it's at today and this evolution and to bring people along, people within my department, they haven't left they haven't left me. You know what I mean? We're kind of working together and pulling this through this vision of now 3 companies. And, we've recently acquired or announced an acquiring a 4th, so we just kind of keep pushing forward and this group kind of keeps getting on board. And it's just exciting to see. It's exciting to be a part of.
Oh, that's awesome. I love hearing that. And I think, it's also been great to see all these questions come in too. So I think people are getting engaged with this discussion and with your stories and strategies that you've been able to share. So what I'd love to do is just kind of go into some, actionable next steps based on what we've talked about, some of the topics we've had. Obviously, we've added some color and context to this, and then we'll get right into the questions to try and save as much time. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, but I just wanted you to maybe kind of look at, you and I collaborate on these bullets and we thought these would be the actionable next steps. It'd be great for you to highlight what you think the most important ones are. I'll get that slide back up there and just give a quick summary of what we discussed, and then let's open up to questions. And I think that'll reopen some interesting topics as well.
Okay. I'm just going through these. I tend to like bullet number 2, building a culture, because it's one thing to, bring somebody into the organization. It's a whole nother thing, like I said, to have them fulfill that ambition, within your organization. So it's really marrying those 2 pieces, the attraction and just the day-to-day for somebody. Whoop.
Yep, I'm still here. This slide I think it's on an animation where it's constantly taking itself off. So I apologize.
Yeah, and leveraging technology, obviously that's a second one. It has to be intuitive and integrated, like I said. We have some of the bigger platforms, and we've worked with you and some of our other partners this year in standing that up here at BMS. So I would also make sure that that these systems are working for the people who have to use them. But that would be the 2 that I just picked right off that list when it wasn't flipping.
I appreciate that. And there we go with the live broadcast. We now have proof that we were definitely live here. So we'll leave that slide alone. And I appreciate you taking us through those actionable next steps, even as the animation was making you go to the last slide there. But just to get some of the questions, I think there was one that stood out to me. I wanted to at least start with. And this is asking you to talk a bit about the intersection of internal talent mobility and advancement, as well as diversity and analytics. So, how are we bringing all of these pillars together? And I know you talked a lot about the collaboration and adaptability that's needed. And, to get those three pillars to all work together to get a solution, I think would be really exciting.
Okay. Yeah. For the TA group this year, especially with the environment, we've put a lot of emphasis into education, making sure that our attraction strategies are, programmatic, that we're getting out in front of the right people, and attracting people in. So opening up our scope as far as our media and advertising outlets. I think there's another talk going on right now with one of our partners, where we've gone into like this programmatic advertising for marketing and things like that to draw people in. Another thing is really realizing what our internal landscape looks like and serving that up and actually opening that up so that people are getting these opportunities. So we're working with our D&I colleagues, we're working with our business intelligence and analytics colleagues to understand where we're at today and how do we open up those avenues for people. I think a personal goal for me next year is really to be bold in this space. So many times people fall into these old actions, they come in with that folder under their arm, so what we're trying to do is progress this and open up these opportunities so it's more intuitive for people, so that people are way more inclusive, and that we can start pulling individuals that you may not have normally tapped into, especially within that internal talent marketplace. Like I said, so many times, and this, I think I'm stealing it from Josh, but you post these jobs internally and you're just praying somebody looks at it, and that's, I don't want it to be like that. I want us to be able to go out there, identify who that individual is, and really move that talent across the BMS. Because I have a feeling if we do that, some of the pressure with external hiring, some of the pressure with contingent labor will probably come down, and I think we'll have better pipelining as well. I think people want to work for an organization like that, where that culture is really, kind of exponentially growing and manifesting itself within,
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers your question.
No, I appreciate it. I think it does. And, another question that it kind of leads to for the next one is, if you could explain a bit, because you touched on this earlier, how you're kind of forecasting out what you think you'll need. But, what are some of the more kind of detailed approaches or strategies you do in order to do that? So, how are you able to navigate that when you don't know necessarily the skills or roles you'll have in 6 to 12 months? What are some tools you do to forecast that or make your best guess so you can better plan?
Yeah, we have a large BI&A team here, business intelligence group. So what we're looking to do is really use modern technology to scrape natural language, and to go out there and go across the exterior market to start to take a look for these trends and things like that. I mean, obviously, like I said earlier, we work with groups like Talent Neuron, we work with LinkedIn. This information's out there, and we want to make sure that, we're kind of, even our competitors, looking out across where other people are playing and identifying some of these future the future of our workforce. For us, I think actually it's the opposite. It's looking at across our internal employee base and workers to see where we're at today. And so, like I said earlier, to start to drive a little bit deeper into that. For somebody to go into a system and put their history, there's a lot of things in play there. There's privacy and you have to get somebody to want to do that, so I think it's marrying those two things together. So like I said, we need to scale that quite a bit, but we do have that capability, and there's technologies that do it as well. So we're really looking at that now and kind of comparing the two.
Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, so we have time for one last question, and then we're going to wrap up. And the time did fly by, so I hope the audience appreciated that and has had a good time as I had, even with that little slide snafu. But one question that came up in a couple different ways, and I'll leave it to you to how you want to answer, is that there's some questions about what's been kind of the best part or most exciting part of working with iCIMS, and just give a quick summary of that relationship, and just in plain language so that everyone else can understand the dynamic of that's watching.
Okay. Yeah, I have worked with iCIMS, not just in my current endeavor, but in the past as well. And Joe, you and your team have been great for me, and I can't thank you enough. I think we've just really formed a great partnership. I love, what you've done with the organization. I originally met you through Jibe, and then, of course, now with iCIMS. And, the product line is directly in line with what we're looking to do. Like I said, we do have some of the enterprise players like Microsoft, and, kind of putting those two things together. And I think what's great is not only is the product, but the thought leadership. You and I can jump on a 45-minute presentation to hundreds, maybe thousands of people and kind of work together like this, and that's something sometimes I think, maybe some other vendors may not realize of how important that is, and I think that's been one of the biggest things in working with iCIMS. Obviously, your roadmap's tremendous, and some of the things we're doing together and will be doing together. But, I think at the end of the day, your team and working together has really been the basis of a lot of that. And we've had to build those business cases together.
I appreciate that. And thanks for answering that question so directly. It's just been a lot of fun collaborating. I think at the end of the day, as excited as everyone is about technology, me included, it's about the people and how we're able to collaborate and innovate together. So, thank you again for all your time. What I would love to just do is kind of call out some more thought leadership and collaboration, where we're hosting our first virtual user conference called Inspire. It's Inspire 2020. It's going to include a conversation with Trevor Noah and Mindy Kaling, really acknowledging all of the innovation that's happening today in this dynamic social climate, dynamic working climate. It's completely free. We've had thousands of people already register. Some really exciting new announcements that are coming up. So just want to make sure everyone's invited to that. And then Bob, it sounds like we still have a bunch of people tuned in here at HR Tech. So if there are any closing comments, anything that you'd want to leave everyone with, feel free. I'd love for you to close out the session for us.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Joe. It's funny. Like I said, I spoke last year, and it was kind of the first 2/3 of this presentation today about workforce planning and TA purely. But, if you would have told me last year that I'd be doing this today, I wouldn't have believed you, and to go through COVID and integrations and to be able to sit here with you today and talk about the successes and looking forward, I think it just, it comes down to, fulfillment and hope, and you don't always know what tomorrow's going to bring. But, when you get to look back and kind of piece these things together, it's worth it. And it's exciting. So I appreciate you having me on today, and it was nice seeing you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. Looking forward to seeing you again in person. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Bob.